Good morning, Dr. Haboyan, classmates. Welcome to NBA 303 Economics for Managers. Our topic for today is Chapter 10, Inflation. Our team composed of the following reporters: Ruth Peno Hermoso, Kyle Pearl Pintang, and Dominic Relesiva. The scope of this chapter are the following. Number 1, meaning, measure, and effects of inflation, theories of inflation and unemployment, price trends, and inflation in the Philippines. My topic consists of the following: meaning, measure, and effects, theories of inflation. First, let's discuss what is the meaning of inflation. The word inflation originates from the Latin word inflare, meaning to blow or expand. The word inflation in the sense of inflating. According to Professor Crowther or Geoffrey Crowther Baron Crowther, a British economist, journalist, educationalist, and businessman, he was editor of The Economist from 1938 to 1956. Prof. Crowther defines inflation as a state in which the value of money is falling. Example, prices are rising. According to Paul Anthony Samuelson, an American economist who was the first American to win the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science, according to him, inflation occurs when the general level of prices and costs is rising. Another meaning of inflation from John Maynard Keynes, an early 20th century British economist best known as the founder of Keynesian economics and the father of modern macroeconomics, the study of how economics, market, and other systems that operates on large scale. Inflation is the result of the excess of aggregate demand over the available aggregate supply, and true inflation starts only after full employment. What is inflation? Inflation is a rise in the general level of prices. When inflation occurs, each income will buy fewer goods and services than before. Inflation reduces the purchasing power of money. But inflation doesn't mean that all prices are rising. This loss of purchasing power impact the cost of living for the common public, which ultimately leads to deceleration in economic growth. The consensus view among economists in that sustained inflation occurs when a nation's money supply growth outpaces economic growth. Now let's discuss the types of inflation. Number 1, depending on the cost, deflation is classified as demand pull inflation, cost push inflation. What is demand pull inflation? Demand pull inflation occurs when total spending exceeds the economy's ability to provide goods and services at the existing price level. Total spending pulls the price level. Demand pull inflation is the phenomenon when price increase in the company because of an increase in demand. It occurs when the demand for goods and services in a company increase more rapidly than the economic production capacity. With higher demand and lowest supply creates a demand-supply gap, which resulting to high price. It occurs when economic growth is too fast. Then we have the cost push inflation. Cost push inflation caused by an increase in prices or inputs like labor, raw materials, etc. The increased price of the factors of production leads to a decreased supply of these goods. While the demand remains constant, the price of commodities increase, causing a rise in the overall price level. A per unit production cost in the average cost of a particular level of output. This average cost is found by dividing the total cost of the resources input by the amount of output produced. Apart from the rise in price of inputs, there could be another factors leading to supply side inflation, such as natural disaster or depletion of natural resources, monopoly, government regulation or taxation, change in exchange rates. Generally, cost push inflation may occur in case of an inelastic demand curve, where the demand cannot be easily adjusted according to the rising prices. Okay. Some of the economists also see increasing money supply as another major cause of inflation. Then we have the inflation rate. Inflation rate is the rate of increase in prices over a given period of time. Inflation is typically a broad measure such as the overall increase in prices, such as increase in the cost of living in the country. How we measure the inflation? We have two major measurements, no? First, we have the wholesale price index, or the WPI, which measures wholesale, and we have the consumer price index, or the CPI, which measure the retail respectively. The goods or services sold by business to smaller businesses for further selling is used calculated by the WPI, but mostly the CPI calculates the inflation. The CPI calculates the difference price of commodities and services such as food, medical care, education, which consumer buy further use. Before we discuss the CPI, it is important to understand what the market basket is. To calculate the inflation rate, economists took a basket of goods and services. A basket of goods represents consumer spending and is used to track changes in the price of consumer goods and services over time. This is a hypothetical group of different items which specified quantities used as a basis for calculation of how price level change over time. When conceptualizing a basket of goods, it is best to imagine a shopping basket. The basket contains everyday products such as food, clothing, furniture, and medical services, etc. As the product increase or decrease in price, the overall value of the basket changes. The value of the basket each year determines the inflation rate for that period. The basket of goods and services is used to calculate the CPI. CPI shows us how expensive is the price of goods and services in an area. The consumer price index, the main measures of inflation in the United States in the consumer price index compiled by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The CPI is an indicator of the change in the average retail prices of a fixed basket of goods and services commonly purchased by household relative to a base year. How is the CPI computed? CPI is equal to cost of market basket in current period over cost of market basket in base period times 100. Here is a sample of CPI computation from 2000 to 2020. Next, how is the inflation rate computed? Inflation is equal to price year 2 minus price year 1 over price year 1 times 100. Here is the sample of computation from 2000 to 2020. What are the use of CPI? The US government uses the index to report inflation rate each month and each year. It is also used the CPI to adjust Social Security benefits and income tax bracket for inflation. The CPI reports the price of a market basket of some 300 consumer goods and services that are purchased by a typical urban consumer. What are the use of CPI? Number 1, the CPI is most widely used in the calculation of inflation rate and purchasing power of the peso. Number 2, it is a major statistical series used for economic analysis and as a monitoring indicator of government economic policy. Number 3, the CPI is also used to adjust other economic series for price changes. For example, CPI components are used as deflators for most personal consumption expenditures in the calculation of the gross national product or the GNP. Number 4, another major importance of the CPI is its use as basis to adjust wages and labor management contract as well as pensions and retirement benefits. Increase in wages through collective bargaining agreement use the CPI as one of the bases. What are the effects of inflation? Before we study the effect, we need to understand some terminologies. First is the nominal income. Nominal income is the number of dollars or the peso received as wages, rent, interest, or profit. And then we have the real income. Real income is a measure of the amount of goods and services nominal income can buy. It is the purchasing power of nominal income or income adjusted to inflation. First, let's discuss the negative effect of inflation. Number 1, consumer will suffer from a loss in their purchasing power and real income. Unless consumer income are increased at the same rate of inflation, the cost of living will rise, reducing standard living for consumer. Number 2, producers and businesses will be forced to increase their price, reacting to higher costs and excess demand. Number 3, businesses may also reduce their workforce to reduce labor costs, which may lead to increased rates of unemployment. Number 4, exporter and importer may suffer a temporary or permanent loss of international competitiveness as it may be difficult to pass on higher production costs in the form of increased price. Number 5, saver will experience a decline in the real value of their savings if nominal interest rates are not equal to the inflation rate. Number 6, government investor will find that due to the higher cost of borrowing, it will make some investments less profitable. And government expenditure will increase due to the cost of providing goods and services to the public. To compensate, the taxation level will rise As a taxpayer, incomes are increased and the cost of goods and the services increase. Now, the positive effect naman ang ating pag-usapan. Rise in asset price such as shares and real estate. Number 2, assets price inflation may occur if there is a speculative boom in the share market or housing market caused by the excessive level of demand. The speculators may gain from asset price inflation by selling their assets at inflated price before the inevitable collapse of speculation boom. Now, let's move on the theories of inflation. Different economists have presented different theories on inflation. The economists who have provided the theories of inflation are broadly categorized into two levels, namely the monetarists and the structuralists. Monetarists associated in inflation to the monetary causes and suggested monetary measure to control it. On the other hand, structuralists believe that the inflation occurs because of the unbalanced economic system, and they use both monetary and fiscal measure together for sorting out economic problems. In this figure, or the figure 3, we will see how the market power theory of inflation. In an economy, when a single or a group of sellers together decide a new price that is different from the competitive price, then the price is termed as market power price. Such group keep price at the level at which they can earn maximum profit without any concern for the purchasing power of consumer. For example, in the past few years, the price of onion were very high in India. The soaring price of onions was the result of the group of action of onion producers. In such a situation, people in the middle and in low-income groups reduce the consumption of onions. However, onions producers earn high profits from higher-income group. According to the advanced version of market power theory of inflation, oligopolies can increase the price to any level even if the demand does not rise. This hike is price level occurs due to increase in wages. The increase in wages is compensated with the hike in price of products. With increase in the income of individual, their purchasing power also increases, which further result in inflation. And then we have the conventional demand pull inflation. The market power theory of inflation represents one extreme end of inflation. According to this theory, inflation exists even when there is no existing demand. On the other hand, the conventional demand pull theorists believe that the only cause of inflation is the excess of aggregate demand over aggregate supply. In full employment equilibrium condition, when demand increases, inflation becomes unavoidable. In addition, in full employment condition, the economy reaches to its maximum production capacity. At this point, the supply of goods and services cannot be increased further while the demand of products and services increase rapidly. Due to this imbalance between demand and supply, inflation takes place in the economy. And lastly, we have the structural theories of inflation. Apart from the two extreme ends mentioned in the above, there is a middle group of economists called structural economists. According to structural theory of inflation, market power is one of the factors that cause inflation, but it is not the only factor. The supporters of the structural theory believe that the inflation arises due to structural maladjustments in the country or some of the institutional features of business environment. Now, let us study the different types of structural theory of inflation. First, we have the markup theory. Markup theory of inflation was proposed by Professor Gardner Ackley. According to him, inflation cannot occur alone by demand and cost factors, but it is the cumulative effect of demand pull and cost push activities. The demand pull inflation refers to the inflation that occurs due to excess of aggregate demand, which further results in the increase in price level. The increase in price level stimulates production, but increases demand for factors of production. Consequently, the cost and price both increases. In some cases, wages also increase without rise in the excess demand of product. This result in fall in supply at increased level of prices, such as compensate the increase in wages with the prices of product. The shortage of production or the shortage of product in the market would result in the further increase of price. On the other hand, the goods are sold to businesses instead of customers. Then the cost of a production increases. As a result, the price of product also increases. Similarly, a rise in wages result in increase in cost of production, which would further increase the price of products. So, according to Prof. Garnier, inflation occurs due to excess of demand or increases in wage rate. Therefore, both monetary and fiscal policy should be used to control inflation, though these two policies are not adequate to control inflation. Then, we have the bottleneck inflation. The bottleneck inflation was introduced by Prof. Otto. According to him, the direct relationship between wages and price of product in the main cause of inflation. In other words, inflation takes place when there is a where there is a simultaneous increase in wages and price of product. However, he believed that wage push or market power theories alone are not able to provide a clear explanation of inflation. After analysis of inflationary situation, Prof. Otto says that the inflation occurs due to boom in capital goods and wage price spiral. In addition, he also advocates that during inflation price is every industry is higher, but few industries show a very high price hike than rest of the industries. These industries are termed as bottleneck industries, which are responsible for increase in price for goods and services. In addition, Prof. Otto advocated that concentration of demand for products of battle industry results in inflation. These are the resources where I found or I got the information. Okay, that's the end of my report. Thank you for listening and keep safe, everyone.